are stories that never made it into textbooks, crashes that were never investigated on the record, and beings that may have fallen from the sky long before we ever had a name for them. When most people hear the word UFO, they think of radar blips, jet interceptors, or blurry night footage. But what about the events that happened before Roswell, before satellites? Even before the term unidentified flying object ever existed, today's mystery takes us back to those forgotten reports, lost beneath layers of secrecy, denial, and time. From a metallic egg that fell near the world's first atomic test site, to a quiet Texas town where locals claimed to bury a being that didn't come from this earth. Each story is strange on its own, but together they may reveal something much bigger, something we were never meant to find. So fasten your seat belt. Because we're going all the way back to the places where the silence began. But first, you just might get incredibly lucky if you like and subscribe before this video ends. It was August 16th, 1945, exactly 1 month after the sky over New Mexico had been torn open by the first atomic bomb at Trinity. In the early morning, two young boys, Jose Padilla, 9, and Rebecca, 7, were riding their horses across their family's ranch near San Antonio, New Mexico. They weren't looking for trouble, they were just looking for a lost cow. But what they found would haunt them forever. A thunderous explosion shook the ground, louder than any cattle stampede they had ever heard. Thinking it was another weapons test, the boys rode toward the sound. But instead of a crater, they saw something else. A deep trench, like the earth had been scraped by a massive blade, stretched out before them, and at the end of that scar in the land lay a perfectly round metallic object, shimmering in the sun. Its surface was unlike anything they had seen, smooth, silver, and seamless. Part of it had been torn open, revealing a hollow chamber. Inside, something moved. Peering in, the boys saw several small beings, no taller than 4 feet. With large heads, thin limbs, and movements far too fast to be human, they didn't know the word alien. They didn't even know what to call what they were seeing. Terrified, they galloped home and told Jose's father. But he dismissed it immediately. Probably a test vehicle from the military, he said. Nothing new around here. But just hours later, military trucks arrived. Soldiers with no insignias sealed off the site and began clearing it without a word. Still curious, Jose and Reme returned at night. What they found wasn't just debris. They discovered a strange, silvery panel, thin as foil, but when they bent it, it snapped back into place, perfectly smooth. They hid the piece under their floorboards for decades. Years later, the fragment was tested. Scientifically, it was just aluminum, but aluminum doesn't remember its shape, not like that. The story remained buried for nearly 60 years. Until 2003, when both men, now old and weathered, shared it with legendary UFO investigator Jacques Vallée. Some say it was just the imagination of two boys in a strange time, but others ask, why did the military show up? Why was the site cleaned up in silence? And why does this timeline, just 1 month after the birth of the atomic age, feel far too close to be coincidence? If the Padilla crash happened in the shadow of the atomic bomb, then what fell in Italy happened in the shadow of fascism, a time when silence wasn't just expected, it was enforced. According to documents revealed decades later, something strange fell from the sky in June 1933, near the quiet village of Magenta, just outside Milan. Witnesses described a metallic object, smooth, silver, and completely without wings, falling silently before crashing in a field, before any photographs were taken, before the public could speak a word. The area was sealed. Military trucks rolled in, and 2 telegrams were issued the same day, one to maintain absolute silence, the other to arrest and punish any journalist who dared speak about it. For decades, the story remained buried. But in the early 2000s, Roberto Pinotti, a respected Italian historian and researcher, uncovered what he claims are classified files from the fascist era. These documents suggest that the crash site and the object itself were handed over to a secret government department. Gabinetto RS-33. This unit was allegedly created by none other than Benito Mussolini himself. Its task, to collect, study, and conceal anything related to non-terrestrial phenomena. Even stranger, the man chosen to lead RS-33 wasn't a general, a spy, or a scientist. It was Guglielmo Marconi, the father of radio, a Nobel Prize-winning inventor with close ties to Italy's fascist elite. According to Pinotti, Marconi believed the object might not have been from this world, and that its propulsion system defied all known physics. If true, this would make the Italy 1933 crash the first documented recovery of a UFO by a modern government. And yet there was no mention of it in Allied intelligence, no public record in post-war Europe, just rumors, until a man from the area, whose great-grandfather had served as mayor of a nearby town, came forward. He recalled family stories of a wingless metal object crashing in the hills, and secret police arriving in the night, ordering everyone to remain silent or disappear. But the story doesn't end in Italy. In 2023, during a U.S. congressional hearing on UAPs, former Air Force intelligence officer David Grush made a stunning claim. A senior military source told him that the 1933 Italian object had been recovered by the United States after Allied forces captured Rome during World War II. And where was it sent? Not Area 51, not Wright-Patterson, but the Vatican. According to Grush, elements of the Catholic Church had been quietly storing material evidence, possibly even biological samples, related to the crash. No official confirmation ever came from the Holy See, no photos, no statements, but for those who believe the question is no longer whether something crashed in Italy in 1933. It's, why did the world stay silent for 90 years? And more importantly, what else has been hidden since? In the weeks following the Trinity nuclear test, the deserts of New Mexico were restless. The world had just been reshaped by fire, but while most eyes were on political headlines and secret weapons, something else had quietly unfolded beneath the radar. Lieutenant Colonel William Brodie wasn't looking for mysteries. He was a career pilot, disciplined, methodical, loyal to the chain of command. On one warm August day in 1945, Brodie was conducting a routine training flight near Alamogordo Air Base when he received a sudden order from command. Divert course, investigate a remote communication tower that had gone silent. The order wasn't unusual. Military signals failed all the time, but what Brodie found on the ground wasn't a mechanical malfunction. He landed near the transmitter station. There, resting quietly in the dust, was an egg-shaped metallic object, roughly 10 meters long. It had no wings, no markings, no visible propulsion. The communications tower had been snapped in half, as if the object had struck it directly. But there were no signs of an explosion, no scorch marks, no smoke, just a massive, gleaming structure that didn't belong. Standing near the scene, watching from a distance, were two young boys on horseback. Brodie didn't approach them, but decades later, when he described the event to family members, he identified them by name. Jose Padilla and Remeb Baca, the same boys from the earlier crash. And yet, no official record of this incident exists, no mention of Brodie's emergency landing, no documentation tying him to San Antonio, New Mexico, during that time. It's as if the mission itself was erased, but Brodie's family tells a different story. They recall him speaking of a mission after Trinity that he was never allowed to report. He would say things like, "I saw something out there, but it wasn't ours. It wasn't theirs either." He left no photographs, no formal log entries, just whispers and memories passed through bloodlines, and yet the details match: the boys, the shape of the object. The timing, just 1 month after the most powerful weapon in history was unleashed. Some researchers believe the incident was part of a larger cover-up, that Brody's report was absorbed into the same black vault as the Padilla crash, never to see daylight again. Others argue it never happened at all, but when two separate stories from two different sources describe the same object, in the same place, at the same time, with no prior contact between the witnesses, the question becomes unavoidable. Are we looking at isolated fabrications, or the intersecting threads of something far more real and far more hidden than we ever imagined? Half a century before Roswell, long before the word UFO had ever been spoken, something fell from the sky over a quiet Texas town. On the morning of April 17, 1897, the Dallas Morning News published a headline that sounded like science fiction. An airship had crashed on the property of a local judge named J.S. Proctor in Aurora, Texas. The craft struck a windmill, exploded, and destroyed part of the judge's garden, but what really drew attention was what they found inside. Locals claimed the pilot had been killed in the crash, but he or it was not human. Eyewitnesses described the being as small in stature, with a large, distorted head and delicate limbs. Some said it wore a strange metallic suit. Others noted markings on the wreckage, symbols no one could read, etched into the metal like a forgotten language. A U.S. Army signal officer named T.J. Weems reportedly examined the body and made a chilling remark. This being does not belong to this world. Rather than call Washington or preserve the body for science, the townspeople did something deeply human. They held a funeral. And they buried the being in the Aurora cemetery, under the shade of a large tree. A small gravestone was placed at the site, engraved, it is said, with the image of a flying saucer. The remaining debris from the crash was dumped into a nearby well. That well later became the source of its own mystery. Residents who used its water began reporting strange illnesses. Tests decades later showed traces of metal contamination, but no clear explanation for its origin. Over the years, the story faded into legend. Skeptics said it was a hoax, designed to bring attention to a dying town that had been bypassed by the railroad. A former resident, Etta Paguz, even claimed in 1980 that a local newspaperman had made the whole thing up. And yet, no one could explain certain things. Why did the gravestone actually exist before it mysteriously vanished? Why was the well suddenly sealed off without warning? Why were all attempts to exhume the alien grave blocked by officials, citing preservation laws? Today, the exact location of the grave is unknown. The headstone is gone. The wreckage is missing, and those who remember the crash are long buried with their secrets. But the story lives on because it raises a question that is difficult to ignore. If nothing really happened in Aurora, then why has no one ever been allowed to look too closely? The year was 1941. America had not yet entered World War II, but in the quiet farmland of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, something had already arrived from the sky, and it was not from this earth. The story begins with a name passed down through 3 generations. Charlotte Mann, a Missouri woman, claimed that her grandfather, Reverend William Huffman, once confided in the family about a night that changed everything. It was late spring. Reverend Huffman had just gone to bed when the phone rang. It was the local police. There had been a serious crash just outside of town, and they needed him to come immediately, not for a rescue, but to perform last rites for the deceased. Expecting a car accident, Reverend Huffman drove out to the field, but when he arrived, he found a disc-shaped metallic object, torn open and partially burned. It had no windows, no writing. No engine parts anyone could recognize, and then he saw the bodies. Lying near the wreckage were three beings, small in stature, thin limbs, and large black eyes that dominated their faces. Two were already dead. A third was still breathing, but only barely. Despite the shock, Reverend Huffman did what he had been asked to do. He stepped forward. He knelt beside the fading figure, and he prayed. He didn't know if the being could understand his words. But he believed that even a life not of this world deserved a final moment of peace. Standing nearby were firefighters and emergency responders. No one spoke. No one took pictures. At least, none that were ever officially released. But according to some accounts, a single photo was taken, a blurred black and white image allegedly showing Reverend Huffman beside the lifeless bodies. The photo has never surfaced, and its existence remains unconfirmed. Soon after the military arrived, the site was locked down, debris was cleared away, bodies were taken, and everyone who had seen the crash was told the same thing: say nothing to anyone. For decades, the story lived only in whispers. Then in the 1980s, Charlotte Mann came forward. She recalled the details her grandfather had shared with her family. She remembered how shaken he had been, and how he never spoke of it again. Skeptics argue that a story this strange should have left a trail: photos, witness reports, news articles, but others point to the timing. In 1941, the U.S. government was preparing for war, and the military already had systems in place for silence. If this event really happened, it may have been the first time in American history that a spiritual blessing was given not to a soldier or a civilian, but to a visitor from beyond our skies. And if true, it raises a haunting possibility that on a quiet spring night in Missouri, a man of God spoke the last words ever heard by something not of this world. On June 6, 1884, the sky over Dundee County, Nebraska, lit up with fire. A group of cowboys were herding cattle near a small settlement called Max when a blinding streak of light tore across the sky. Moments later, a loud explosion rocked the ground, and smoke rose beyond the nearest hill. The cowboys rushed toward the source, expecting maybe a fire or lightning strike. What they found instead left them frozen in place. At the center of a scorched patch of earth lay a massive cylindrical object, about 60 feet long and 12 feet in diameter. Its surface was metallic, but not like any material they had seen. Some said it had large gears or wheels, like a strange machine out of a future no one could imagine. The heat coming off the object was unbearable. One man suffered burns and partial blindness just from standing too close. No one could get near it. Word of the event spread quickly. The next day, a larger group arrived, led by a local official named E.W. Rowlands. They planned to mark the site and return with tools to recover the object. But that night, a thunderstorm rolled in. It poured hard. When the group returned the next morning, the object was gone. In its place were several shallow pools of bluish-white liquid, thick and gelatinous. Witnesses described the substance as looking like lemon jelly mixed with cottage cheese. The smell in the air was sharp and sulfuric. The metal was gone. No trace remained. Local newspapers covered the event. Some speculated that the object had dissolved in the rain, as if made from something not designed to survive Earth's atmosphere. Others believed it had been retrieved during the night by someone or something else. Years later, the editor of the Nebraska State Journal, James Calhoun, claimed the entire story was a hoax he had invented to amuse readers, but his confession only raised more questions. The original article had names, descriptions, measurements, and a specific location. It described a substance no one in 1884 would have easily imagined, and then came the modern discovery. In 2013, over a century later, a group of amateur rock collectors found several greenish, glass-like stones near Max. The stones had unusual white inclusions inside, nearly identical to the description of the strange liquid left behind in 1884. No scientific explanation has confirmed a connection, but the discovery reopened a mystery that had been buried not by time, but by a single rainstorm. If this story was pure fiction, it was an incredibly elaborate one. Too detailed, too strange, too specific, and like so many other forgotten incidents, it shares elements that now feel eerily familiar. A metallic object with no origin, an unnatural material, and a sudden, complete disappearance. Not every crash leaves behind wreckage. Sometimes, the only evidence that remains is a whisper in an old newspaper and a mystery waiting to be rediscovered. If even one of these stories is true, then history as we know it is incomplete, and maybe, just maybe, we were never meant to know the full truth.